Hello, welcome to episode 5 of Sales Enabled. In this conversation, I'm speaking with Raoul Monks, the founder and CEO of Flume Sales Training. Raoul is an international keynote and sales kickoff speaker and has helped thousands of salespeople succeed by encouraging them to change perspective and look at the world through the eyes of their customers. This change in perspective allows salespeople to design approaches that make it easy for the customer to say yes. Raoul is an ultramarathon runner, which we also discuss in the show, a film buff, and an avid reader of business books. And in this conversation, Raoul and I dive into how the current climate has impacted buyers and how this is dramatically changing how salespeople need to think and act if they're going to meet quota. This show is packed with tips for salespeople who are finding it hard to sell in a crisis and goes into detail in the different ways salespeople need to adjust to the new world of the buying process. Let's jump into the show. Hey, Raoul, great to see you again. Great to have you on the show. You look like you're doing well.
I am doing well with my deer heads behind me. They're not real. And my luridly coloured backdrop. We've just moved. I've got so many excuses, but it's great to see you, Dan. How are you?
I'm excited that you've got a year-round Christmas decoration. That's what I'm excited about. You can decorate it differently throughout the year. So if we do another one of these, I'll see.
Taking the baubles off, yeah.
It's economy, right? We're talking about efficiency. We want to be efficient. We want to be productive. That's a new one.
Your big mic. It's huge.
Thanks, man. I'm actually just me. I'm very small. I'm stood a long way in the background. There's like 3 kilometers between me and the mic.
But like a light bulb is suddenly going to turn into a party in your place.
It's just a prop. all of this is Chat GPT now. I'm not even real. I've avatared myself.
GPT, unbelievable. I'm yet to get a proper go on it, but I've seen my colleague use it. It's incredible.
It's amazing. I can't say anything other than that. It's going to change the world. But it's going to change the world in a similar way that Google Maps changed the world, right? You and me are of a similar age. You probably still remember driving around and having to print off the pages.
It was so illegal.
You also had 20 pages, and it was like the first 10 were how to get out of your street. I'm like, I can do that. And then it was only the last one that was super useful. So I think it's gonna change the world. We don't know how yet. But it's definitely fun to try and embrace it as it's coming on. And actually, this is one of the things, right, is embracing change, embracing things as they evolve. We've both been in sales training for a while. And I think when we get to our stage in a career, and I've interviewed lots of sales trainers, there's typically 2 classes of sales trainer. There's the sales trainer who has come up doing the same sort of sales training and hasn't let go, and they're still using the aged techniques and the assumptive close is the only door they've got, or ignore the objection and just steamroll through. Those kind of people.
That one.
Oh yeah, just get 5 yeses and then just close them. This stuff used to work. It's crazy, but buyers have shifted, right? And this is what we're going to talk about today. The buyer expectation has shifted, and so sales trainers have had to shift. And so, I'm excited that we're talking today, and you've made that shift. You've made that evolution as you've seen the sales world shift. And so I'm excited to hear your opinions and maybe even how they've changed over the years, and especially right now. We're all going to admit, now is a crazy time to be a salesperson, right? It's just the whole world is changing, everything's breaking. So we'll talk about that. But before we get into that, let's learn. I want to get to know a little bit more about you. And you sent over your bio. Thank you very much. And I'm trying to zoom in on bits and pieces. And there was one line that said multiple ultra marathons. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, you put the things in there that kind of are going to spark interest, but it isn't necessarily a thing I do every single day. But yeah, it is something that I got into, and I would still say am into. I'm still waiting for a time to really go for it. I'm making excuses constantly. I've just moved house, and I don't know, we're growing the business, all of that sort of stuff. But you know what? I mean, it's been an amazing journey, actually. I kind of got into running when I was about 24, 25, did a couple of marathons. My brother beat me. He didn't have time to train for an ultra marathon. I'm like, right, I'm going to just go into it. Something he can't beat me at. So got involved with that. And I was really lucky. I have a brilliant mate who runs the running show called Mike Seaman. And he invited me to run up to Brighton with a load of incredible people, including a guy called Jamie Ramsey, who had run from Canada down to South America in 367 days with a baby stroller. And I ran with him and 8 or 9 other people with amazing stories just like that. Elise Downing, who ran the coastline of the UK on her own just because she didn't want to work. All of this stuff. And so I kind of got really inspired and thought, you know what, I'm going to go out and do my own stuff, and end up running across Iceland, did 7 marathons, 7 days, 7 countries. I did indoor relay with Mike Seaman at the start of lockdown where we raised a ton of money, running for a whole month. I mean, it's phenomenal, but it's very easy to make excuses not to do it. And that's the phase I'm in right now.
But you'll get over it. And I think what I find with people who exercise and do the kind of intense exercise and the crazy challenges is it does weave. Like you have a period where you're really on it, and then you have to have that rest. Like the body definitely needs to recover. Help me out. For when I exercise, for me, there's 2 elements. There's the escapism piece. Like I just need to go and shut my brain off, put my headphones on, and go and train. But then there's also that bit which I know that the focus, the dedication, the discipline. I also know it makes me better at my everyday life. What does running do for you?
Yeah, I've thought about this quite a lot. I think there's that feeling where when you get into that rhythm and habit of doing it again and again and again, it does make you feel like you've done something. And because so much of my life, and I don't mean to sound like a dork here, but is work or my kids, it's like outside of that, what am I doing for me? Which getting into that routine, it just makes me feel kind of good about what I've done. But there is also a piece where I've become more and more aware as I've got, as you talked about earlier, older, that I've got a lot of
all of us, buddy.
I know. We're still working out how to go Benjamin Button on this, but I've realised that I've got a lot of mental energy, and that doesn't mean intelligence. It just means there's a lot going on up there, good and bad, and right and wrong. But it never kind of calms down, and that gives me a time, almost meditative, to kind of have a period where I can just chill, and it re-energizes me, even if it's one of these I do every 3 or 4 months. It kind of restarts me and gives me energy. So makes a massive difference for me, and you're really motivating me to want to get into it again because I feel like I'm a bit of a fraud here. I haven't done one since the start of COVID. So
I'll check in on you very soon. But no, I love what you say. There's the meditation. I used to run, like I'm training in the gym now. We spoke about that last time we caught up. But for me, when I used to run, the first half hour was not enjoyable. Because of the mental side, it would just be like, oh, you're tired, your legs are tired, go and sit on the sofa, shouldn't you be doing something else? And it wasn't until I got past that the brain just shut up. And then everything after that was peace and quiet, like plus the music playing. And so is that what you're looking for? Is that kind of just meditative element?
I think so. I mean, I've done 2 week-long silent retreats before, having never meditated before and not knowing what they really were, not knowing what meditation was. With a slightly mental overactive mind, I turned up and had to do 8 hours of meditation a day for a whole week, obviously not be able to talk, not be able to interact, anything like that. And it does give me a kind of a similar feeling of just, I don't know, being able to look at your brain, seeing what's happening, sort it out, and then kind of come out and you're in a more rested place. But my tip for getting over that, going for a run and the first 30 minutes is always go on a loop, never go one way. Because if you're going on a loop, you're going away, and every moment you go away, once you get past halfway point, you've got to come back. So fundamentally, your mind is like, well, I've got to keep going to get home quicker, as opposed to just going on a big run from one place to another, which always. I remember I did the New York Marathon, and you start at the start, and you can see the end point with the skyscrapers, and you're just running straight. I'm like, this is mental torture.
Wow, it just seems like it's never getting closer. Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit there. So, everyone, for this podcast, this is about sales evolution. And I think right now is a key time that sellers need to learn to do something a little bit different. The world, like we said earlier, the world has gone a little bit crazy, especially in the tech space. We're seeing teams being let go of, huge amounts of people now entering the job market, which is great for kind of talent movement. But as a seller, you're now selling into an entirely different beast. It's a different company. It's oftentimes different people. And I know this is something that you've been looking at a lot, right? Is this evolution and what's going on in the world right now. So I know you have some strong opinions on this. How do you see sales happening right now? How do you see the role of the seller? What do we need to be aware of on the buyer's side? Like, what's going on?
So, I mean, you all know this inside out, Dan. But I mean, as a company, just to kind of put a lens through this, as a company at Flume, yes, we're a sales training company. And back to your point before of there being kind of traditional sales training companies and others, very much like to think we're in the camp of the others, where fundamentally we know that the way that buyers buy is changing every day. And what works in sales is needing to be fine-tuned every single day. It's becoming more and more important, our sales experience, but also the way people learn is changing all the time because of tech and hybrid teams, all of that. So fundamentally, our business is all around understanding those things. But at the heart of all of it is the content of, I suppose, the methods that we recommend. And that is built out of buyer behavior. And what's interesting, I suppose, I hate to say it, but a big part of it is it's just all polarized. Everything's polarized. It happened through the pandemic. It polarized how people bought and how difficult it was for them to buy. And so that polarized the importance of the buying experience, selling experience, and made that even more important. I mean, one of my favorite quotes, but it's an oldie now, but I just think it's exaggerated and probably above what I'm about to say now, is from Challenger Sale back in, I don't know, probably 1882 when that was actually written. There was a piece there around how buyers buy, and 9% is down to price, 19% products and service, 19% brand, and 53% is the sales experience, because they need to trust that what they're going to buy is going to work and have the impact that they need. That now, easiest way to think about it is that that's become even more important, because the fear of making a bad decision has skyrocketed. No one wants to put their neck above the line as a buyer and say, hey, I'm going to do this. Because what if it works? You might not be here to do this. And then you've also got the fear of change. People don't want to change because you're not going to get fired for buying IBM. But their roles have changed. So you've got sellers going to them, messaging and positioning what they're selling in a way that might have worked 6 months ago. But actually their roles have changed. They're having to do more with less. So actually they're probably going to need different messaging. And all they want to do, and being told, is probably to strip suppliers. So they've got to make sure that the suppliers stay with at the right ones. I mean, there's all of this different stuff, which none of it's brand new, but it's all happening at once. And it really means that the sales experience, more than ever, needs to be phenomenal for them to say yes, because it's tougher than ever. So, yeah, it's an interesting one, because all it really means is polarizing the importance of doing this stuff well.
Yeah, and I love how you talk about fear. And I think, and I'm curious at the end, we'll talk about this, because I know a lot of people in sales training will listen to this. But as I evolved as a trainer, I kind of started on the influence persuasion side. But a few years ago, I did my master's degree in behavioral decision science and understanding the other side, which is how do people make these decisions? And I know, you mentioned the old IBM kind of ad for like the 80s. Nobody ever got fired for specking IBM. I can never remember if it's IBM or HP or whoever it is, some old computer thing.
I think it's I say IBM, but
it sounded good. It sounded good. We'll go with it. And people can fact check this afterwards. But yeah, I mean, nowadays, I think it's less about making exciting, dramatic decisions, and also, it's about making safe decisions. And like you say, a lot of that is consolidation, but not wanting to make the wrong decision. And I think, we talk about buyers' roles changing. They're often taking on areas that they're maybe not as familiar with. So the familiarization is not there. So making a bad decision is even more likely at the moment, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And fundamentally, they're under more scrutiny. They are under more scrutiny to do the right stuff. I mean, businesses have goals, and when you're not hitting the goals, everyone has to be completely formulated and focused on, is what you're going to do going to help us get to that specific goal? If it's not, don't do it. And so all of these frivolous things, which now feel frivolous and weren't before, they're not able to do. They might want to, but to be able to actually do well in your role and get a well done is quite tough these days, because so many people are losing their jobs and there's so many eyes on them.
Yeah, no, it's tough. And I like what we talked about there, because this is one of the things that I've seen as well is, historically people could buy individually. Like I would buy like solution systems, whatever. But that's changed, right? So yes, we're selling to individuals, but also there's the kind of rise of the buying committee. And is that about just sharing workload of decision, or is it about hedging decisions? Like you talk quite a lot about buying committees.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of both, actually. So again, if you look at the research there, it's going crazy. I mean, you've got back in the day where you might be able to make an individual decision, probably back in like 2007, 2006. And that was in the days of going out around a golf course as a salesperson with your buyer and trying to
The good old
get
days.
That was great. I mean, please, can we go back there? But it moved from that to in 2014, again, CEB research here, but 5.4, that went up to 6.8 around 2018. The pandemic threw that completely out of sync and it went out above 11ish. But what also happened is that the level of the people that are involved started getting higher and higher. And actually, we do a lot of research ourselves, and we heard from a lot of our customers that it wasn't necessarily going up to 11, but actually you're getting more high-level people who were just kind of shutting stuff down. So actually sometimes the group was getting smaller because they didn't want all those cooks in there with opinions, but they made it really difficult to get it through because it was just the C-suite who were there. So there are big changes with the buying committee. And I think there is a piece there where the business does not want to make mistakes. But equally, I mean, the Jolt book recently, if you haven't read it, go out and read it. I know you have read it, Dan, but there's a massive piece there in terms of commission bias versus omission bias. And commission bias is this idea that you make a decision to buy or do something and then it doesn't work. That is a huge risk and a huge no-no because you get singled out for it. It's much easier to go with omission bias, which is where you don't do anything and you don't know if it didn't work or not, but you don't get fired for that, right? So this idea of making a decision, it being wrong, a mistake, and being cut down for it is absolutely pinnacle to customers right now. And it's just shining through so much with the clients we work with. We're getting so many people coming to us saying that is our biggest challenge, our win rates. We get miles down the road, but there's so much indecision. And why is this? And ultimately, it's because of those buying committees. And the biggest challenge most people have, there's a number of them, but actually is that their salespeople are single threading stuff, you know, and being able to multi-thread and actually map out all of the different people who are going to be influencers, not just who is the biggest chief within the business, but who's going to have the loudest noise. Because it can be someone who's just started 2 months ago, but they are seen as a wizard around this area who can say, I don't think that's going to work. And that will get the ears of people right now. Whereas beforehand, they'd just say, hey, be quiet, Hank, we're not listening to you. And we're going to go with what we thought, right? So there is much more risk involved. And it's all about putting confidence into a reason to change, but also putting confidence into a reason to actually purchase now. And that's a tough skill for salespeople to navigate. And especially when there's more than one stakeholder, which is literally 100% of the case.
Yeah, you talk about multi-threading. It's essential now, especially with movement. People kind of changing roles every 5 minutes almost. It seems as the decision maker at the beginning will be different to the one at the end potentially. And if I look even just to last year, like I made a decision to change out our training platform, and I'd used the system before. I knew it worked, but it was me making that ultimate decision. Yeah, I had other people, but even when it came to the point, like literally not physically signing, but digital signing, whatever it is, still write a pen. There was still that element of apprehension, like, will this work? Even as an previous client, even knowing that it was such an improvement over the system, there was still an apprehension in me to make that decision because, like you say, all eyes are on you. And it was one of those ones where it's like, if this goes wrong, Dan, your neck is on a block. Like it's almost that, and I'm not surprised buyers are feeling like that. So let me ask you a question. So, if you think about selling as the two sides, right? So it's got the emotional sale and it's got the logical sale, the pathos, the logos, the ethos, and all those kind of things. We go all the way back to Aristotle. Does that mean are salespeople trying to go more logical? Is that one of the problems? So we're thinking, okay, well, they're not going to make an emotional decision, so we're going to go logical. And so we're trying to sell everything logically, knowing that emotional sales, like, is that playing a role, do you think, in these kind of sales processes dragging on?
I think that's really interesting, actually. I hadn't really thought about it like that. But now you say it, it's a really good idea. It's put thought. So my initial thing is, okay, so what do people do wrong in this situation? When people, as salespeople, are experiencing deals dying, what normally happens is desperation because managers are saying, just close the deal. And so actually that formulates approaches which are 100% wrong for the buyer. because we start trying to stress buyers out and get them to say yes quickly and all of that stuff. But also we start going out to new business, start preaching everything about how great we are. And we forget all of the stuff we should be doing. So that's kind of an overarching challenge. But actually, this idea of emotional versus logical is super important, because on a logical basis, right? On a logical basis, what you need to do, very obvious, but you need to understand the buyer deeply and be able to personalize stuff so you can talk their language. You need to help them see a compelling reason to change. So you need to get them to see what their performance challenges are, quite logical, what their approach challenges are, what they're doing at the moment with access to, and why that's causing their problems in terms of performance, and make sure logically they're ready to buy, qualification, right? But then once you've got them to say, hey, I need to do something different, then it's about putting confidence back in and making sure you're recommending stuff and making sure you're making the buying process easy, etc. All very logical. Yeah. But people, I know relationship builder versus challenger goes against this, but people buy people as much as they buy the business, right? And they buy people because of confidence and trust. And so being able to emotionally connect with someone is super, super important. And one of the parts there, I think, which is really coming out is this idea that in the past, it was, okay, you've got to ask a ton of questions. If I look at your Call AI and you having got 64% that they are talking versus you, then that's a bad call, right? Yeah. But all of the research that's coming out now is actually saying it's more of a two-way conversation. And what is that two-way conversation? Yes, it's leading with insights. Yes, it's you asking questions, but it's also around teaching. And teaching is not just sharing insights. It is about storytelling. It's about bringing to life the challenges that other people like them have had and are having, and the decisions they made, why it worked, why it didn't work. It's storytelling not about you as a business or you as a person, storytelling about other people like them and how to make safer decisions. And that is a connection which is emotional, because storytelling is the most fundamental way that people connect. And that sort of skill is huge. But the other skill I'd say that really comes in on the emotional side, which is massively underplayed, is this idea of co-creation. So back in the day, there was some research from the RAIN group, I think it was, that said that you're 10 times more likely to be able to win a deal if you're involved in co-creating the deal. Now, when you talk about multi-threading, which is quite a logical process, connect with lots of different people, understand their motivations, get them bought into change, get them aligned to you, make sure that they're a champion or not, or you understand their block. All of that stuff's called quite logical, right? It's a chart. But how do you do it? You've got to bring it to life. And actually, one of the mistakes people make is they think, actually, I know this person and I know that person. I've connected with this person. But have you really understood what that person needs and co-created a solution that works for them and gets them bought in? That ownership of an idea is much more likely to get a buyer saying, I want to do this. You get momentum from a number of people doing that ownership through co-creation, which is an emotional attachment, then you're much more likely to drive it through your business. But often this multi-threading thing is looked at as quite logical. But you've got a collection of people, a business, that's all it is. It's a logo that people work under. There's people, so I think there is a bit of a distortion here where people think relationship building isn't important anymore because Challenger said it's not. I think there's a misinterpretation of the word relationship builder, and it's hugely important to be able to do both. Sorry, it's a bit of a rant there, but you got me going.
This is what this whole show is about. Like, if we're just two people having rants about the state of sales, then I'd be very happy with these conversations. But you said some really interesting things in there, and I like this idea of co-creation, right? If I've spoken to person A, person B, person C, then I have those three opinions. But the sum is often greater than the sum of the something to do with sum and parts. There we go. I've nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. So there we go. I do love to destroy quotes in this, and I've done one today. But often, like you say about bringing people together, this can be a scary place for salespeople, though, right? Because we're then venturing into the unknown, and salespeople like to control the situation, like to know the question. They like to sell a specific product potentially at the end. And if we get into this co-creation space, who knows what's going to come out of that? Is it necessarily going to be perfectly aligned? So, what have you found works in those situations? How do we embrace the uncertainty, but also know that that's the best thing for the client?
Great question. I think a massive part of it is knowing why you do what you do. So go back to kind of Simon Sinek days, everyone buys why you do stuff, not what you do, right? But that is not just about your brand. That's about your ideas. That's about your recommendations. That's about your solutions, right? And we could have the best product out there. It could be, let's say, Flume Sales Training. We do have the best products out there. But let's say we know that, but no one else knows that, right?
Yeah.
It's about how you're packaging stuff and how you're putting it together in a way that's going to drive the results your customer needs to do. And actually, it's about the why. It's about knowing with the co-creation why something's going to work or not. And if you deeply understand why something you're selling is going to work in situations for a customer compared to others, then the co-creation doesn't mean you need to come up, and again, I need to be really clear on this. It isn't you come up with a different answer every time. It's that you help your customer understand why what you've got is the right answer because you've built it for the right reasons, right?
Yeah.
If you've got a product, a solution where you've packaged it for the wrong reasons, that becomes more difficult. But if every packaging piece that you've done, every recommendation that you've created in terms of kind of your typical default recommendations are built to drive specific outcomes your customers want to drive, and it's built from their perspective, co-creation becomes easy because you just ask a couple of questions about outcomes. You share some insights around what works, what doesn't work. You get them to build a criteria that is agnostic, and he's like, hey, we're the ones who do that. But that needs to start with you understanding deeply the why, putting yourself into the customer's shoes and creating it for the right reasons, not just because you want to smash your targets. It has to be that you're going to smash your targets because you created this from the right lens.
Yeah, I love how you put that there. And the way I describe it is as a salesperson, like imagine you're a consultant. A consultant goes in product agnostic, right? We don't care about what the solution is. We're going to define the solution. And salespeople want to be consultative, but we also need to sell stuff. So the balance is, educating clients on the full scope, everything that's out there, right? Here's all the different ways you could solve your challenge. But then salespeople's job is to eliminate some of those options through education, right? Through teaching insight. So, here's an option you've got over here. You don't want that one, or is it a great idea to have this factor? I don't think so. So let's eliminate those options. And gradually you eliminate as many options as possible until there's very few on the table. And the phrase that I always wanted my salespeople to say, this is back in the day, was, yeah, but how do we do that? Because if you can open the doors and then eliminate all the options until there's just like a really obvious solution on the table, and they say, yeah, how do we do that? That gives you permission then to transition into more of a sales process. So go.
I think with that, I really like that. And I think with that, there is also this, you talk about education, and you also talked at the very start of today about kind of old school trainers saying, hey, ignore the objection, right? It's gone so much the other way that what you should be doing right now is bring up the objection, right? And actually sharing what doesn't work and what other people think and why and how to properly think before the customer's even got there. And I think that's quite an interesting idea because it comes into kind of recommendations and being able to kind of, hate the metaphors I'm using here, but peel the onion and kind of get to the point of this is what you need to be kind of focusing on. And being able to do that through an educational approach, sharing insights, sharing content for people to go and look at, but also just saying, look, at this stage, a lot of people are looking at X and Y, and this is what they believe. And this is actually how you should think about it, phrasing it much better than I have just then. But it's a really interesting approach because it just absolutely solidifies trust, because you're there saying, I'm putting myself in your shoes and this is what normally happens. And it's about making those people you mentioned earlier who may not be like, this may not be the main part of their role. It may have new bits in their role. They're scared of making the wrong decision, need to make the right decision, probably never made a decision like this. They're like, I don't know what to do. All they're sitting there doing is probably sitting there with imposter syndrome, thinking, oh God, I don't really know what I'm up to. I wish someone had told me. And that's really the role of the salesperson, is that from every conversation you have, pick up insights, theme them, share stories back, and help your customer funnel down to a right decision, which is you, but it's teaching them in an agnostic way that leads to you. So and all of this has just become far more important because trust and confidence is like the most important stuff right now.
It is. And you mentioned the challenge that we've mentioned it a few times. And if you still haven't read the challenge sale, it's still a great book. Like you say, some of the numbers may have shifted given all the regular changes, but the focus on sales experience is still essential. The idea of teach, tailor, take control is still essential. And the difference between a relationship builder and a challenger for me is they both build relationships. It's not a box thing; it's a continuum thing, right? Is I still need to build relationships, but the thing that, and I think trust comes from this, is trust comes from being in a situation where somebody's got your back, right? And I trust my friends because not because they say the things I want them to hear, but because they say the things I need them to say in the moment. And
Yep.
whether that's something that I like or not, they'll say it because that's the right thing to say. And I think this is it, right? So relationship sellers will typically just, step back and say, okay, well, yeah, you're right. We probably don't need to do that. Whereas a challenge seller, if it's right, will kind of come in and say the things that are maybe a little bit controversial, but you need to hear it in the moment. So, and I think that does build trust.
And that's a really good point, because that is, again, one of the bits of research that came out of the Jolt book was around what affects win rates, right? And the biggest thing to affect win rates was setting expectations, and being realistic about the expectations, bringing them up yourself and not over-egging it, because people don't believe that they're going to get 3 times ROI off this within 4 days. It might have happened once for one person, which is probably you when you set up. Like, it's not. Don't share that. Share, actually, this is realistic. Let's aim for this and bring it up yourself. Yeah. It's all about kind of being able to be, like you said, trusted, but say the tough stuff. Although that's not that tough, because you're still going to be saying, hey, it's going to work, but you're not going crazy with it. It's about being realistic and authentic, which is unfortunately not what a lot of salespeople are employed because of. Often it's kind of the gift of the gab that people go for, and let's get someone who's got a black book or an amazing talker and all of this stuff. Fundamentally, authenticity is at the heart of this, being able to put yourself in the buyer's shoes and think, you know what, in your situation, what's the right thing?
Yeah, and I love that. And it is, you mentioned storytelling. Storytelling is such an important part of this. And one of the things that I do, one of my team members, she does this on a regular basis. All of our deal wins, all of our success stories, if it's going out into a case study, you get the glossy case study, right? Company XYZ does 3x ROI, and everyone's like, right, that's not going to happen for me. We detach, right? We detach. So what she does, and I think more companies should do this, is she'll go and interview the deal win team, and she'll speak to them and say, look, what happened in that deal? What were the challenges? What were the things that the case study doesn't say? Because if you as a seller could then go and learn the backstory, you can tell that story so much clearer. So if I come to you and say, Raoul, we work with a company similar to you, and you're like, here we go. I've read the case study because I've done my buyer research. I know you're going to talk about company ABC. And I say, yeah, we're going to talk about company ABC. But what you don't know, what you didn't see, is the behind the scenes. And that's where they lean in. They lean into that story, and they're like, oh, geez, they are like us. We do have similar challenges. Maybe that could happen for us as well. And so you're using the logical piece of like the fact, but you're still tying into that kind of bigger goal. So, if
taking a note of that, I'm going to start get my team to. We had exactly that situation recently. We went to a customer. Well, actually, they came to us, customer, really great in our ICP, really exciting, and we part of the process was to send out a sales brochure. That wasn't obviously a main part of the process, but it was there. And on our sales brochure, it had a load of testimonials with improved win rate, etc. One of them said, and it's completely factual, one of them said that after a month of the training, we increased on our team of 20 people revenues by 500K, right? It happened, and it was brilliant. So we put it on the sales brochure. The feedback we got from the customer was that 2 or 3 of the directors just thought that was bullshit, excuse my phrase. And they all said that didn't happen. And so I'm like, oh my God, how do we win here? But actually, there is this thing about kind of over-egging it. You get an amazing result and shout about it. People don't trust it, even if it's true. For the record,
humble bragging.
You do that.
Oh, I know anything you put in front is going to be true. But you want to come with a humble brag, right? And it's a tough thing. You've got to have both things at the same time. You got like, yeah, we're good, but we're cool. We're also good, but we're also just normal people, just like you and everyone else. So it is not, and it's things like changing the numbers, making it less of a round number, a bit more specific. But I think have it as the headline, but knowing how to tell that story is just a huge part. So anybody who does case studies and success stories, great. Have the glossy version. Get the nuts and bolts, the behind the scenes bit as well.
Great.
You talked a little bit about new business versus existing clients. We talked about status quo. I know you talked a little bit about status quo being you want to disrupt it for new biz. We've got to go in and challenge the status quo, but we need to reinforce it for existing clients? Can you talk a little bit more about how you encourage sellers on that side?
Yeah. So it's a really interesting one because it is quite a different skill set. that you need. But there are overlaps. So that's a bit contradictory what I've just said there, but I'll explain what I mean. So fundamentally, if you're tasked with account growth, which for any business right now who is looking to either survive or thrive right now in this tough climate, your solid win is normally going to be on current accounts and growing them, right? So if you lose one of them, you've got to put 5-10 times the effort in, probably even more, to win a new bit of business. So being able to focus on growth is really important, but knowing how to is also incredibly important, because what would often happen is people will build account plans and they'll go out and they'll start getting Frank, Tina and Betty in different parts of the business, and they'll do white space mapping and all of this sort of stuff. Yeah. And they'll start going in and saying, hey, we're working with the other part of the business. Actually, they connected us. Let's have a conversation. But what they sometimes neglect to do is realize that they've got to really retain the account they've got at the moment before they can grow it, right? So there's kind of two elements. You've got to make sure that what you're delivering to the core is working. And absolutely, when you get yourself into the buyer's shoes, they're looking right now, where can we save money? Where can we strip stuff in the right phrase there, but you know what I mean. Where can we save money? Where can we take stuff out of what we're doing? Where can we lose a supplier so that we have better outcomes? So they're looking potentially to get rid of people. So you need to, first off, to retain people, be really shouting in the nicest, most authentic and partner-free way, what we're doing is working. Look at the impact it's having. You tell me back what impact it's having. And we've really got to spend some time with that retention bit, reminding them of where they were. This is often forgotten, where they were before you started working with them. Right. So actually, they will be thinking about what happened in the last 2 months. They'll be thinking about that complaint they had that didn't get solved, or that problem that happened. But actually going back 3 years to when they first started with you and the problems that were there compared to now, and doing that over a horizon that's longer than 2 months is super important. So what we're trying to do there is not disrupt the status quo, it's to cement the status quo by reminding them what they were looking to achieve, where they are now, how much of that is because of you, and getting them to say, we can't deal without you, right? But there's also, from that side, that's retention, to then be able to grow it, you need to kind of do the exact opposite, which is more in line with new business, right? So what normally happens is, if you're looking to grow an account without expanding to different divisions, what normally happens is we hope that by delivering a brilliant, whatever it is you're delivering or selling, a brilliant outcome, they're going to buy more, right? But put yourself in their shoes. Why? Because something's worked brilliantly and you've spent X amount on it, would you suddenly say, oh, that was so good, I'm going to buy more? You just said, that was so good.
That was good. I'm happy with that. Yeah, I'm not going to go and buy it again. I've just had it.
So it's about delivering to expectations, but then to get someone to buy more, you've got to do the new business piece, really, which is looking at their future. Again, I talked about horizons, looking back 3 years. The next part is, when you're talking about the future, look at their business and look forward 3 years. Where do you need to be, and what are the gaps that are there based on what we're delivering at the moment, to then be able to help us help you more? But what tends to happen is people go in with this upsell mentality, which is they try and retain the customer, and then they say, hey, let's resubscribe, or whatever the phrase is, depending on what you're selling. And you could also have this, this, and this. But unless the customer is looking at their future and realizes that what they need to achieve is over here and they need other stuff to get there, then they're not going to buy anything more. So there's this kind of reinforce with the retention, then look forward and make sure you're getting them to see their business future and like moving forward. There is also, quite obviously, then once you've done that, expanding within the business, as I mentioned before, with white space and making sure referrals are high. I mean, right now, referrals are absolutely king. So there's all of that stuff, but it's just not focused on in the right way. There's so many companies, and as a bigger mistake, so many companies aren't focusing on account growth at all. They're focusing on new business.
Yeah, actually, ironically, I'm seeing some companies stripping CSM as a role. Like, if they're reducing kind of the customer success side. And, we all know what an MQL and an SQL is in terms of marketing and sales qualified leads. But, what I want to see and what I know is going to come more in the future is the CSMQL, right? Which is that customer success qualified lead. Where we do go and we speak to clients, we say, look, here's the transition we've made. And we encourage them not as if the skill set is different. I think you're right. If you're a CSM, you're not necessarily got that hunter mentality, but it's still equipping them with the ability to say, okay, well, who else in the business could benefit from this? Or where else in the business do you see us being able to have an impact, and then doing that introduction. So I think CSM as a role has that reinforcement piece. I love what you talked about going back over time, not just having that recency bias, but also then thinking to the future. And I think this is a conversation I've had a few times, is at the moment, the world is holding their breath. The whole world, it seems, is holding their breath, like waiting to see what comes next.
Yeah.
And I think there's going to be effectively two types of organization that come out, right? There's the first one is going to be the ones that are still holding their breath and waiting. And then I think the other ones are going to be the ones that realize that, and they've been through this before, is that, after the darkness comes the light. It's like a roller coaster. I want to go with the Ronan Keating lyrics, but you know what I mean.
But we can do it.
But I have the microphone, but not the voice. But it's this idea, right? Is that afterwards, there's this bounce back ability. There's this transition that, yes, things are hard, but sometimes things are going to get better. So finance and interest rates are going to go back to normal. So we'll be able to lend at a sensible rate, and businesses will have more money, all of those kind of things. And in which case, it's those companies that are ready to go that are going to capitalize. It's the companies that have invested in this time, even though it's crazy, thinking, how do we consolidate and play smart, but also have one eye on the future, prepare our teams for that point, and then get ready to go. So actually sales training and a lot of the work we're doing is that preparation piece. It's like, guys, get ready. I know you don't want to hear it, but at some point it's going to get good again. And actually selling to that, sellers, appreciating now, but selling, look, here I'm preparing you for the future. And what do you want your business to be 3 to 5 instead of 3 to 5 years, not 3 to 5 months?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's I don't like to talk about the pandemic too much because it's obviously not a nice time for anyone. But there was that period there. I mean, we worked very closely in that time with lots of sellers, and we ran a load of webinars around helping them to help their buyers at that point. And that work that we did in that time, we didn't charge for. We just went out and helped people, and we had brilliant numbers to the webinars. And actually that for us afterwards had the biggest impact when we came out, because everyone remembered us, everyone knew us. And it's the same with like advertising. We work a lot with media and events companies, and it's the same with putting any sort of marketing out there. Everyone strips their budgets, but actually the companies who thrive afterwards are the ones that are remembered in the tough times, and so it's similar with the sales training piece. If we can continuously deliver an amazing experience, whether people are buying off us or not, and ideally they will be, again, you're going to be the ones who are remembered for being the company out there trying to help them. So done in the right way, it's a real winner. But it is tough, because I liked your phrase of recency bias, and also the holding the breath thing. That's what we've got to kind of burst that bubble in the nicest way of, actually, let's help you see past 2 months' time, Mr. or Mrs. Buyer. And that's really the secret, is where do you want to be when you come out of this? And how do you want to be perceived, and what do you want to achieve then? That's why I'm here now.
Beautiful. So, but still, as you said, doing the logical things, getting all the information, multi-threading, doing all the good sales hygiene stuff. Selling. And then we go back to that emotional bit. It's like there is light at the end of the tunnel. Let's kind of aim at that. So that's brilliant. And I just wanted to say well done to you, because I know, yes, sales education, sales training, sales, impacting the behavior of sellers is your job, but you don't just do it to get paid. And this is what I want to say. You do the webinars, you do the education. I've seen you speak at events. You do this because, I don't know, you're probably like me, compelled to do it. It's vocational, and you feel the value of shit. I didn't want to put it, but you've owned it. So if you own it, then it's okay. But no, I just wanted to say thanks, and thanks for coming on and sharing your insights, because, like you said, it's a tough world out there for sellers right now. And I think we've shared some great ideas. You've shared some great insights on this show that sellers can go and use immediately to really connect with buyers, to understand the buyer position, and just to make better connections, and to really be human at this time where everything, like I said, everyone's just holding their breath. So thanks for today, and it's been a lot of fun. Where can people find out more about you? Where can people find out more about Flume Training? What do you want people to do after this?
First off, it's been an absolute pleasure, Dan, so thank you. Website, flumetraining.com. I'm all over LinkedIn, so it's Raoul Monks. There aren't many other parents stupid enough to call their kids that, so you'll find me by Googling me or by going on LinkedIn. Always up for a chat, though. Always there to help where I can, so get in touch, follow us. If there's anything we can do to help, then we'll. And if you want it, Dan, we have one pager around selling in the tough climate right now, which covers some of the stuff we've talked about before and more. So if people want to get a copy of that, I'll hand it to you, Dan, and you can somehow put it with the podcast if you want to.
Yeah, we'll put links in the show notes and everything. And, I've been onto your white papers page, selling experience. We talked a lot about that today. There's another white paper on that one as well. So, I can highly recommend going and checking out a little bit more about Raoul and Flume training. This has been an absolute pleasure, an eye-opener. And, I look forward to checking in on you in a couple of weeks. And hopefully the running trainers have had a little bit more usage as well.
It's a bit wet outside. It's a bit cold. I might stay inside.
I'd take that as an excuse. Go and decorate your reindeers. All right, well, Raoul, it's been fun. See you soon.
You know what I think, Ron? I think that was a sales call. Good job, buddy.
So you're going to buy a subscription?
No, I already get the Times.
Bye-bye.